Today we're at the Brookwood American Cemetery, the only World War I American cemetery in the British Isles, and we're here to tell the fascinating stories of some of the men who are buried or commemorated here. So here we are at the Brookwood American Cemetery. Now in our last video we were exploring the Brookwood Cemetery, telling the stories of so many recipients of the Victoria Cross who rested here at Brookwood in the wider cemetery. Well, today we've come specifically to the American cemetery that sits here within Brookwood. This is the only World War I American cemetery in the British Isles. There's 468 burials here. There's another 564 men who are commemorated on the wall to the missing inside the chapel. We also have 41 unknown men who are buried here as well. Today we're going to tell the stories of just a couple of the men who are buried here and a couple of the men who are on the wall to the missing, including two recipients of the Medal of Honor who are commemorated here as well. So let's go take a look around the only World War I American cemetery in the British Isles. Okay, so if we start outside the entrance here and head inside, you can see, look, as with all of the cemeteries here at Brookwood, the Commonwealth cemeteries and also the American cemetery, they are immaculately kept. Now, that does give us a slight challenge with filming a lot of these videos because there's always guys working with power tools as there are just up here ahead of me. So we'll see how we go with the noise today, but I'm not going to grumble about that for a second because they do such great work keeping this cemetery looking immaculate, as you can see just looking at the grass and the flowers and stuff here around me. So the cemetery up ahead of us here has four small plots kind of in sort of a square around the central chapel that you can see here ahead of me. Let's go take a look. So as we said, we've got a bit of power tool noise here, but hopefully you guys can still hear me fine. So here in the centre of the cemetery, we've got the usual suspects, of course, of the American flag and the chapel there in the back. You can see this sits within Brookwood Cemetery. So literally just beyond the cemetery, kind of over there, you can see a lot of the Commonwealth First World War graves. And the American cemetery sits just here in the middle. So we've got four plots, two there and two on this side. We're actually heading to plot B for most of our stories today. So let's head over that way now. Now, first of all, we're going to take a look at the men who are buried here. Now, as we said, there's 468 burials here at Brookwood. Now, those are men here in Surrey who largely would have either died of wounds, so maybe brought back from battle to hospitals here in England and then died of those wounds, or a large percentage of them will be men who died of disease. So the Spanish flu, Spanish influenza, ran rife through soldiers of all countries especially towards the end of the First World War. But a lot of them will be men who fell victim to that, who were buried here, who died in and around the UK. So let's go take a look at a couple of the burials of the men who I've managed to research a little bit about. Now, I looked at researching some of the men before I came here, and one of the people who I found quite interesting, because I actually managed to find a photograph of him, was Simon Iverson. So you can see this is the grave of Simon. He is from Idaho and he died on October 23rd, 1918. Now, we talked about how the men here largely either died of disease or died of wounds in hospitals where they'd been brought back from the battlefields. Well, Simon Iverson has on his record that he did die of disease, quite likely the Spanish influenza towards the end of the war there. In fact, very, very near the end of the war on October 23rd, 1918. Here's a grave which just jumped out at me a little bit, just because of the name. So Ludwig Godfrey Naus, a private in the 242nd Infantry Regiment, the 86th Division from Minnesota, died the 2nd of October 1918. A very German-sounding name, obviously fighting largely against the Germans. I don't know if there's maybe German heritage in his family. He's American from Minnesota, but the name sounded German, just made the grave jump out at me a little bit. Now, we mentioned that we have a few unknown soldiers in the cemetery, 41 to be precise. Well, here's a few of them. So here we have, or here rests in honoured glory, an American soldier known but to God. And then same just on this next headstone here. Okay, so the next grave we've come to talk about is that of Dewey A. Ledford, a sergeant in the 30th Division from Tennessee, died on the 29th of October 1918. Now, Dewey actually died of wounds. He was wounded in France and brought back over to a hospital. He was in Dartford in Kent when he died, and he's now buried here at Brookwood. So like we said, the two different, largely the two different reasons for the guys being here, either died of wounds in hospitals over here or died of disease. And Dewey A. Ledford died of his wounds after fighting in France, died on October 29th, 1918. Now, incredibly, during my research, I actually managed to find a letter that Dewey wrote home to his father when he was in hospital in Kent, in Dartford, what would have been just a few days before he died. I've actually got that letter here. I'm going to read it to you now. It says, "Dear Dad, just arrived at the base hospital here in England yesterday. I'm sorry I'm not able to write this letter myself, but I expect to be able to write in a week or so. My arm is sore on account of the wound, but my wound is not serious and expect to be well soon again and be able to get another crack at them. Well, I don't know I can say any more, so we'll close with love and best regards to you all. I am as ever your loving son, Dewey." Now, that letter was written in the hospital in Dartford in Kent on October the 24th, 1918. Just a few days before Dewey died of those wounds. Now, you can see it's written, my wound isn't serious, but you got to remember this is 1918. You know, medicine was different then from now. It wouldn't take much more than an infection in that wound for that to then become fatal, which might well be what happened to Dewey. But I found that really interesting, a letter that he wrote himself just a few days before he died, over in Kent, and now buried here at Brookwood. So having looked around some of the graves here, we're going to head into the chapel over there in the centre. So the chapel has the wall to the missing, where there are the names of 564 men who were missing. And we're going to go and look at two in particular, because we have two recipients of the Medal of Honour who are named on the wall inside the chapel there. Okay, so when we come inside the chapel, first thing we should notice is there's an awful lot of wreaths and kind of signs of remembrance here today. Now, that's because we're just a couple of days after Memorial Day, and of course there was a lot of ceremony and stuff here at Brookwood. So inside the chapel we have the names of 564 missing. Those are members of different parts of the American Armed Forces. I can see Navy here on the wall, Army, Navy again on this side. We've got Coast Guard actually up there behind us. But on this wall are two names of recipients of the Medal of Honour. So we're going to go and check those out now and tell their story. Okay, I'm conscious that it is really dark in here, so hopefully you guys can still see what I'm looking at. So first up here, we've got a name, and you can see the difference is that it is written in gold rather than kind of the dark red with the rest of the names. And on the left, you can see the piece that distinguishes that this is the recipient of a Medal of Honour. So this is the name of Gunner's Mate First Class Osmond Ingram. He was the first sailor to receive the Medal of Honour during the First World War. And on the 15th of October 1917, he was serving on USS Cassin. He spotted an incoming torpedo and attempted to release the ship's load of depth charges before the torpedo struck the ship on the side. The torpedo did hit the ship before he could accomplish that, and he was killed by the explosion. With that being at sea, his body was never recovered, and he is named here, engraved in gold, on the wall of the chapel, alongside other crewmates of the USS Cassin. A recipient of the Medal of Honour, Gunner's Mate First Class Osmond Ingram. Now also on the wall in the chapel here, it's a little higher up, so it's a bit harder to read, but we have, again, you can see engraved in gold, we have the name of Medal of Honor recipient Gustav A. Sundquist. He actually fought in the Spanish-American War, which is when he was awarded his Medal of Honor, but then he later drowned at sea during the First World War on the 25th of August 1918. His body was never recovered during that, and so he's named here on the memorial to the missing. But as we said, during the Spanish-American War, he was awarded the Medal of Honor. Now, his citation for that Medal of Honor reads, on board the USS Nashville during the operation of cutting cable leading from Cuba on the 11th of May, 1898, facing the heavy fire of the enemy, Sundquist displayed extraordinary bravery and coolness throughout this action. Okay, so we've checked out the names of the men who are missing here and the couple of recipients of the Medal of Honor. We're going to head back out into the cemetery, and we're actually going to talk about this cemetery's really interesting link to World War II. I mentioned that this is a cemetery for World War I, and it is, but at one point they had World War II soldiers buried here as well. So let's head back outside and talk about that. So what's Brookwood's connection to World War II? Well, after the US entered the war in World War II, US burials actually started to happen here at Brookwood. And by August 1944, there were more than 3,600 US servicemen buried here at Brookwood. Those would be men who died in and around the British Isles. After the war, the decision was left to the families if they wanted to have those loved ones taken back to the States to be reburied there, or whether or not they wanted to be left here in the UK. Those that were left here in the UK, instead of being left here at Brookwood, were actually moved to the new American cemetery at Cambridge. Of course, the Cambridge American Cemetery, somewhere that we have been a couple of times on this channel. The other really interesting thing here at Brookwood is this is the place where US servicemen that were executed during their service in England were buried. They were later moved to the Wazane American Cemetery over in France and taken out from here in Brookwood. So there you go, Brookwood's really interesting connection to World War II. So at one point this was way bigger, less than 500 burials here now, but at one point more than 3,600, including those World War II burials here at Brookwood. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video taking a look at the beautiful American cemetery here at Brookwood. I was just chatting with the guy who kind of works here and runs some of this, and it is a beautiful, well-kept site. I could tell that the guys who work here really care about this, as you see with so many of the American and Commonwealth cemeteries around the world. This, of course, is a slightly lesser known American cemetery, you know, compared to somewhere like Cambridge, but this is a really fascinating one. If you're in the area, I recommend you take the time to come and have a look. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, you can do the YouTube stuff right here on the screen. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do that by taking a look at the different ways in the description. Guys, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you on the next video.